Hello everybody and welcome to the first Top 5 Wednesday of May. I can't believe it's May already, it's really weird. So this week's topic was top castings, so a book to film or book to television adaptation. I chose in this case to avoid television adaptations because if I don't, basically the cast of Game of Thrones would make up this entire list. And I tried to stay away from something that was a series of films, so there was no Harry Potter. I'd have to pick like the whole cast for Harry Potter. So I stuck very strictly with film adaptations from novels, so no epic poetry, but it's okay because I don't even want to talk about Troy. We're just not gonna go there. I did my best to pick 5 that I thought really stood out in capturing the essence of their characters. So yes. Number 5 on this list is Daniel Craig as Lord Asriel from The Golden Compass, which was an adaptation of the first book in Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials trilogy. That book is known in the UK as Northern Lights, and it's known in the US as, of course, The Golden Compass. This is, I suppose, for me an interesting choice because this movie was a train wreck. It was an awful movie and it was a really bad adaptation, which is unfortunate because in this case, as I said, I really liked the casting. I actually thought most of the casting in the movie was done really well, but I really particularly liked Daniel Craig as Lord Asriel. I think he was able to exude this quiet, which could turn very quickly into a smugness and an air of pomposity, but then there's also the whole, he's really dangerous and he's willing to sacrifice things that, I mean, as you read the books, you realise just how much Lord Asriel is willing to sacrifice, and it's really terrifying. And I'm really sad that actually The Golden Compass was not a good adaptation, because had it been a really good adaptation and just a good film, we might have then gotten The Subtle Knife and the Amber Spyglass, and I would have gotten more of him as Lord Asriel. Whatever the case, the movie wasn't great, but I thought his portrayal of the character was really impressive and I really quite enjoyed it. Number 4 on this list is Russell Crowe as lucky Captain Jack Aubrey in the film Master and Commander, which is an adaptation of the kind of Captain Jack Aubrey novels. These novels are basically high seas naval adventures set during the Napoleonic Wars, and Captain Jack Aubrey is the, obviously, captain of the HMS Surprise, and Master and Commander is sort of a combination of a couple of elements from different Captain Jack novels all thrown into one movie. I love this movie. It's in like my top 10, maybe even top 5, like favourite films I've ever seen. And I think it's my favourite performance by Russell Crowe. He's so dynamic in this lead. He plays all these different shades of the character, and it's mind-boggling to watch because he seems to always play these very serious characters, and to see him play someone like Captain Jack who's so lively and but yet brilliant and has this great relationship with the on-ship doctor who's his total antithesis, and it's a phenomenal movie. And Russell Crowe's capturing of Captain Jack is just scary good. He makes for such a dynamic lead, but also as this wonderful cog in the ever-turning wheel that is this ensemble cast of characters, because it's a ship, so you have a lot of different people you need to balance. And as much as Captain Jack is the lead, he's our protagonist, he's just one part of the ship, and Russell Crowe has a way of being the leading man but also knowing when to back off. That to me is so impressive, and that's probably why I always loved him as Captain Jack. Number 3 on this list is Gregory Peck as Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird, which is adapted, obviously, from To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. In my past Top 5 Wednesdays, you've seen To Kill a Mockingbird pop up a lot, and while it's certainly not my favourite book of all time, I love the film, and it's probably one of the best adaptations I've ever seen, and one that was done back in the 60s, I think is so incredible. I think in looking at film adaptations, we don't stray too far back because film as a medium has evolved so much that adaptations are often kind of better the way we look at them now. And it's just, I mean, he is Atticus Finch. It's eerie. I forever think of Gregory Peck as Atticus Finch, and I love Gregory Peck. I've seen a whole bunch of his movies. I mean, I love him in this. I love him in The Gunslinger. I love him in The Yearling, in The Roman Holiday. I mean, I love Gregory Peck. but his portrayal of Atticus is brilliant because Atticus is such a great character, and to take on a role like that and do it in a way that felt natural was sort of astonishing to watch, and he just is forever one of my favourite adaptations of a character I've ever seen. Number 2 on this list is Keira Knightley as Elizabeth Bennet in the 2004-2005 adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, obviously based off of Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I know this is a pretty controversial choice for a lot of Austen fans because for most people, you know, you can't beat the 95 version, which is, you know, 6 hours long and can take its time with the story. This is why I didn't want to include television or miniseries, because they get more time to tell their story. I wanted to look at someone who played a character where they only had, you know, really between 90 to, you know, 150 minutes. You know, an hour and a half to 2.5 hours is kind of a standard film length. I think it's so much more difficult to capture a character and give us their story in such a limited amount of time, and I really love that adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. I think it's beautiful to look at. I think it manages to distill down the novel really well to fit its time frame. And fun fact for those of you who didn't know, Emma Thompson did an uncredited rewrite of the screenplay. She adapted the 1994 Sense and Sensibility, so that's why the Pride and Prejudice script is so good, because you had someone who'd done it before and done it really well. And despite the fact that I will agree to anyone who tells me that Keira Knightley is perhaps a bit too good looking to be Elizabeth Bennet, and she is, though they definitely tried to play it down her looks, but I mean, Keira Knightley is so beautiful, it's unfair. She's just so gorgeous. I think she captured the spirit of Elizabeth Bennet, this kind of liveliness and the quickness of her temper and all those different things that make us love Elizabeth Bennet. I think she captured it really well, and I like that she was closer to the age that Elizabeth Bennet was, because Elizabeth was only meant to be about 20 years old in the book, so I like that they had someone who was closer to 20 playing the role. I think Keira Knightley was like 22, 23. And there's something about youth which I think does a good deal of favours to that particular character. And number 1 on my list is Vivian Lee as Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind from 1939, which is an adaptation of Margaret Mitchell's novel, Gone with the Wind. I read Gone with the Wind when I was in probably the 5th grade, and I saw the movie when I was in like 3rd grade. So I have a bit of a long history with this very long, very chunky novel. The film adaptation is long. It clocks in at somewhere close to like 3 to 4 hours, because that was actually fairly standard back then. You would actually have an intermission in the middle of the film. It was still viewed almost like theatre in a way. So it's a long movie, and Vivian Lee gets a lot more time to work with this character, but I think she nails it, because Scarlett O'Hara is hard. She's equal parts likeable and unlikable. She does a lot of things which you look at and you don't condone, and you're not very proud of her for doing them, but at the same time you kind of understand why she's doing them. And then there are other times she'll do something to be like, wow, okay, she's really smart and she's really brave and she's really gutsy. If you're like me, and I'm sure like a lot of people, you're going, why the hell is she pining after this little weakling Ashley Wilkes when she's got Rhett Butler right here? And if I could do two, wait, this is my list. I am going to do two. I am adding Clark Gable as Rhett Butler, because I think Scarlett and Rhett are a team, and it's hard to have one without mentioning the other, so I pick both. It's my list. I do what I want. I also like Clark Gable as Rhett, because Rhett could easily come off as just as a cad, or just a cavalier, and it would be interesting. Or when you get the twist, or the spin on it, and you realise just how much he really does love Scarlett, and he can just be kind of a wuss. I think Clark Gable and Vivian Lee both dance these very delicate lines of their characters so well, because these are two characters you could just so easily hate. I think they managed to make you like them a little, so that by the end of the film, just like at the end of the book, you're upset that they're not together. But at the same time, you're like, well, they kind of deserve it. But then you're like, but you want them to be together. But they kind of deserve it. But I want them to be together. They're perfect for each other. So yeah, Vivian Lee and Clark Gable, forever in my heart as playing probably the first time I ever truly shipped something. I shipped Scarlet and Rhett, and I was so angry at the end of that story because I didn't get what I wanted. And especially the movie, because they nailed it. I further, when I read the books now, imagine Vivian Lee and Clark Gable. I think they're just so good. But that's it for my Top 5 Wednesday. I will say this was a very difficult list for me to distill down and try and narrow out 5 performances that were just, like, nailed it for me. And so that is all from me, and until next week's Top 5 Wednesday, cheers.